Hey everyone, welcome to Educon Community Java interview series. Today we will discuss about the variables, constructors, and different members. So first of all, what is a variable and what are the types of variables in Java? So basically, a variable is a name given to a memory location that stores the data values. So it can store primitive data types or the objects like a int a equals to 10. So a is the variable, int is the data type of a, and 10 is the value for the variable a. So a class can have the following types of variables. First one is instance variable. So this is basically defined inside a class, but outside any method. Then local variable. This is defined inside a method, block, or constructor. Next is class variable, which is static variable, which is defined in a class outside any method and prefixed with a static keyword. That is basically class variable. So instance variable and class variable both will be inside the class but outside any method. Difference is for class variable, it will be prefixed with the static keyword and the local variable will be inside the method block or constructor. Clear? Next is what is the difference between instance variables, local variables, and static variables? So instance variable belong to an instance of a class and are created when an object is instantiated. The local variables basically declared inside a method or block or constructor and exist only within the scope. Next is static variables means it will be inside the class but outside the method rather than any instance and are shared among all the objects of the class. When are static variables loaded into memory? So static variables means the class variables are loaded into memory at the time of the class loading. So they are the first members to be initialized. Okay. So are there any global variables in Java? So Java doesn't support global variables as they do not align with the object-oriented programming paradigm. And also global variable usage in other programming languages is also not for good practice. Okay, so mainly these three: instance variables, local variables, class variables. Instance variables will be created when an object is instantiated. Local variable declared inside the method block or constructor and exist only within that scope. And static variable belong to the class rather than any instance and are shared among all the objects of the class, right? So can we declare a final variable without initialization? So yes, such variables are called the blank final variables. So these variables can be either static or non-static, but must be initialized before use. Static blank final variables can be initialized in a static block. So example is like private static final int blank final. So you can see that those are basically the variables either static or non-static but must be initialized before use. So static blank final variables can be initialized in a static block, right? In this way, private static final int blank final. Can we make a local variable final? Yes, of course. A local variable can be declared as final. So it is the only modifier applicable to a local variable. Hmm. So if we will make the local variable as final, so uh, we cannot modify the value. So what is a constructor? So constructor is basically a special type of method which is being used to initialize the objects, and it has the same name as the class. So class name is fan, and here we are using this special method fan. The class name fan and that method name is same. This is a constructor, and there are two types of constructor. The next question is like that. So what are the types of constructor? One is default constructor, which is provided automatically if no constructor is defined in the class. Next is non-parameterized constructor, means a constructor without the arguments. And parameterized constructor, a constructor that accepts the arguments. When are the constructors called? So constructors are called when an object is created using the new keyword. So if no constructor is defined, Java automatically provides a default constructor. Clear? Mm. So if you will not create any constructor, then it will be no issue for creating an object, as Java automatically will provide a default constructor to you. Can a constructor be final, static, or abstract? No. Constructors cannot have these modifiers. Final, as constructors cannot be overridden, so making the final is unnecessary. We cannot override the constructor methods. So if we will make it final or not final, it's not a problem. So if we will make it final, then it's unnecessary. Why we make the methods at final? As those methods will not be able to override, and constructors itself will not be overridden. Abstract abstract methods lack a body, whereas constructors must have one. So constructors must not be abstract. Static static methods belong to a class, while constructors are called for object creation, right? So that's why constructors cannot be final, static, or abstract. Can a constructor have a return type or return statement? No. Constructors do not have any return type. However, they implicitly return an instance of the class. What is the use of the private constructor in Java? So private constructor restricts the object creation outside the class. This is useful for implementing the singleton pattern. That's why the question will come like, for the singleton pattern, what are the conditions? So the first condition should be like, we need to use the private constructor, as private constructors restricts the object creation outside the class. Okay. So can a constructor return a value? Constructors do not have an explicit return type, but they implicitly return an instance of the class. Can an abstract class have a constructor? Yes. An abstract class can have a constructor which is used to initialize the common fields of the subclasses. Next, how do we define a method in Java? So a method is basically a block of code that performs specific task. So it is defined as, we will put the modifier first, then return type, then method name, and then data type arguments. And then inside it, we will write the method body. What is method signature? So a method signature consists of the method name and parameter types. Like find sum. Inside it, we have passed two parameters, int a, int b. So is the return type part of method signature? No. The method signature only includes the method name and the parameter types, not the return type. That's why it's not necessary to have a return type for any method. Like the constructor, it has no return type. So it has no return type. Implicitly, it will instantiate the class itself. Okay. What are the static methods? Those static methods belong to the class rather than an instance and can only access the static members like public static int get. So to call a static method, addition.get. Okay, so static methods belong to the class rather than an instance. So can only access the static members. Can we access instance variables inside the static methods? No. Static methods and static blocks can only access static members. What are method declarations? A method declaration is when a method is defined without a body and ends with a semicolon. So method declarations are used in abstract classes and interfaces. As you know, for abstract classes, it has no body, right? For abstract methods also, there is no body. So that's why method declarations is when a method is defined without a body and ends with a semicolon. That's why those are used in abstract classes and interfaces. What are the interfaces? So an interface is basically a blueprint of the class that defines what a class must do without implementing the methods. So all methods in an interface are abstract and public by default. So interface demo inside that void method 1 void method 2. You can see these two methods both are default type. So those are basically the blueprint of a class. So just assume a class without implementing the methods. That is basically the interface. So interface, all the methods in an interface are abstract and public. So what is a native method? So a native method is a method implemented in a non-Java language, targeting a specific machine type. Then can we define a method as final? So a method can be declared as final, but we cannot override that method. Okay. So that the subclasses cannot modify that method. Okay. So one example, like suppose you have created one final method, like final sum method. So inside that you have passed two arguments, int a, int b. But if you will put the final as you have put the final, so that's why the subclasses unable to override it and unable to use the same method and pass the different parameters, right? So can we create an object for a final class? Yes, objects of a final class can be created. Like string is a final class. You can make the objects of it, right? So these are the basic questions or important questions I have added here regarding the variables, constructors, the data members. Okay, so I hope you liked it. So if you have any other questions or concerns, then you also uh, comment down in the comment section, and we also can discuss those things later. And next, I will discuss more about the object-oriented programming's related questions and also discuss those topics in the next session. So thanks for watching. So do like, share, and subscribe as much as possible for showing some supports. Thanks everyone. Bye.